Hey guys, well, I decided that since I wanted to decorate for autumn anyway, that I was going to just kind of take you along for the ride. And some of this worked kind of well, and some of it didn't. The didn't kind of goes in the veins of I tried to leave space on like one side so I could put book covers and stuff. And sometimes that meant that you really can't even see what I'm doing. But you know what? I don't care this time. I'm not going to do this often. So it works this time, and you can just be merciful or not. I'm good with not, whatever floats your boat. But I thought while I did this, instead of just me blabbing at the camera, I would do my decorating and talk about some of the books that I talk about the books that I read the second half of August. So and a lot of what I did the second half was audio and uh, Kindle because I was doing a lot of traveling. So I only have a few, like, I think it's like 4 or 5 that are actual physical copies that I may end up in front of the camera for, depending on how long this takes me. Also, I listened to almost an entire series of the Alan Grants, and so we're probably gonna actually talk about each one of those all, one right after the other. And so it's entirely possible that I could mix these up a bit because I listened to 6 within an entire month. So it's kind of a thing. But so I don't know if I actually talked about book 1 in the Inspector Ellen Grant by Josephine Tay last month or not, but if I didn't, I should have. That one, I kind of discovered that I think Josephine Tay is a better writer than Agatha Christie. Her mysteries aren't as complex, but they are a little more they're a little more unique, but was the writing itself was kind of, I don't know, it was just more elegant without being formal or flowery or just, how some elegant writing is overdone. This is just, she's just clearly a really, really good writer, and I enjoyed that a lot. The first one, I can't even remember what happened in it because my brain is just let it go. But the second one was A Shilling for Candles, and I gave it 4 stars, mostly because I was really, really annoyed. These take place, I'm thinking I'm thinking they're after World War II. They feel like it. There's just kind of something about them that has a it's not, I mean, clearly they talk about the war, and it could be talking about World War One, but I don't feel like it is. I feel like it's World War II, and it's because of the kind of technological advances and some of the things and some of the attitudes are a little more modern. So I think they're probably late 40s to mid 50s, but I could be completely wrong about that. They're a little timeless in that. Clearly, when they were written, those people felt the time, but I just didn't. But in A Shilling for Candles, it's a great title once you've read the book. I really can't tell you why it's called that, but it's so, so good. And it would have had 5 stars if they hadn't, there was an awful lot of irreverent uses of God's name compared to the first book, and this was written a long time ago. I say in my review that it was almost 100 years ago, which makes me feel like maybe this one was earlier. Maybe the timeline on it was earlier, and then Grant grows throughout the series, and maybe that's why I think it's so much later. But it was kind of interesting because this one kinda has a kind of a sensationalist attitude. It seems a little, like, over the top at times, but you're dealing with, like, a Hollywood actress, and you're dealing with theatrical people, and so somehow she just makes it work, and I thought that was pretty cool. And then the next one, number 3, was called The Franchise Affair. This one I said in my review that I gave it 5 stars just because Tay didn't follow the usual tropes with series and sleuths. So, in this, these are the Inspector Grant mysteries, right? I mean, this is Inspector Alan Grant, and so it's his series. And yet, the coolest thing about this one is that Grant isn't the one doing the investigating. There's a lawyer in town who is called in to help when this big it's crazy. This girl shows up after being missing for a month with very little on, just her she didn't really even have her underclothes, just her dress and shoes, I think, and she just shows up at home and gives a story about how she was offered a ride by these 2 ladies in this very specific car and taken to this place, and she describes it really well. She describes all kinds of stuff inside the house, and it's proven that all the stuff that this girl says is true, but she tells stories of being beaten and forced to work and just all kinds of just crazy stuff, and the book opened when one of the women accused called this lawyer and said, "We need you to come out." And the franchise is the name of the place that they live in. And so that's why it's the franchise affair. But and then it just kind of spirals from there. But this lawyer who does not know what he's doing is our sleuth. Grant does appear in the story, but not like you'd expect. And so it was just kind of really neat how very, very different it really was. And I just remembered what the first book was. The first book was The Murder in the Queue, and that it's exactly what happened. Somebody is murdered standing in this closely packed line of people, and so when someone steps forward and creates a gap, that person slumps to the floor, and you see he's been stabbed, and then Inspector Grant has to figure out who did it and why. And who the guy who seems the most likely obviously can't be the one, right? But Grant doesn't think it's him, but he's searching for this guy because he's pretty sure he has to at least eliminate him, but he thinks it's him, and then he knows it's not, and then something's not right, and, it's gotta be him, and I love that he didn't know what he was doing either, and that was kinda cool. So, that was actually book 1. I think it is called, like, Murder in the Queue or something along those lines. Anywho, and then I listened to the 4th book. Oh, okay. So To Love and Be Wise, it so a guy goes missing. He's a famous photographer and he goes missing. And then everybody, a shoe turns up. And so they're trying to figure out who killed him because if his shoe turns up, then he's got to be dead. And I really can't talk a lot about it because it'll give it away. But this is just one of those books that you get to the end and you're like, "You got me. Should have seen that coming." And I didn't this one, and I don't know I had my whole plan. I knew exactly what was going on, and I actually had some stuff right, but completely wrong at the same time. But most of it, I was just completely wrong. But there were a few things that I knew something was off here and off there, but I got what was off and who was behind it completely wrong. And I came up with an alternate. If it's not that, it's got to be this. And that was wrong too. And the entire time you're reading the book, you're like, "Why? Why is this happening? This is so weird." And she did it. I mean, this woman is an incredibly clever writer. I saw her on Facebook. There was just like this blurb about her, and I had never heard of her, but she was like she's one of the golden age mystery writers, and she was incredibly well known, and I had never heard of her. When I found out about her just before I went on my retreat, and my friend gave me that book because I'm reading these, right? And she knew all about her. I'm really impressed by this gal and her writing, and I just it was just really, really kind of crazy fun. So, number 5, book 5 is The Daughter of Time, and it's the one that my friend said I needed to read with the book that she gave me that I'll talk about in a little bit. But The Daughter of Time is fascinating. It kind of really shows what a great writer Josephine Tay is, because in this one, Inspector Grant is laid up in bed, and he's people keep bringing him books to read, and he's just totally not interested in it. He's not getting any better, and he's like, "I need something, just give me something." So, one of his friends brings him The Murders of Richard III for him to look at. And he starts going down this history rabbit hole, and everybody knows that Richard III killed his nephews, and everybody knows that he was, a humpback, and everybody knows, and yet everything he's finding as he starts researching isn't fitting with what everybody knows. And so by the end of this book, all we are getting, because he's in bed the whole time, and it's always from his perspective. So seriously, that's all we get is a guy in bed talking about what he's discovering with someone else, and I was riveted the entire time. I was fascinated. All I wanted to do is find out more. I left it going, I want to solve this myself. He actually convinced me that Richard III was innocent. So I thought that was really cool. Because, I mean, it shouldn't work. It's a lot of in one sense, it's a lot of telling instead of showing, which, we're told not to do, which they did more of back then, I grant you, but it doesn't feel like you're getting an info dump. It feels like you're discovering it along with him and sharing your excitement for what you've learned as he does. And so that was just it was just so good. So, 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 so good. And then the final one, I'm so sad that this is the end of the Inspector Alan Grant. I want them to turn them into BBC things. And these are just really, really good. But this last one, Singing Sands. So at the beginning of this one, Grant is still messed up. And I don't know if it's a continuation from his hospital stay, like he went back to work too soon and had a breakdown or what, but Grant is having some serious struggles. He's got a definite, like, claustrophobia thing going on. Just being on the train, he doesn't sleep the whole time because the door is shut, and he's just feeling like he's going to go insane. He's trying to force himself to endure it, the whole 9 yards. Well, as he's getting off the train, there's a dead guy. Shocker, right? But it's chalked up as to this guy, cracked his head, was very clearly very drunk. And so he, cracked his head on the sink and he died. And of course, we all know that this isn't going to be how it is, but that's how it's portrayed. And, Grant goes off, and it looks pretty cut and dried to Grant, except that while he was in there, helping the guy who found him deal with the problem for a minute, he accidentally picks up a paper, and on that paper are some lines of verse, and he can't get it out of his head. And part of this investigation process that he goes on, when he's supposed to be kicking back and fishing, right? But he goes on this quest to find out more, and as he does, it does actually help him recuperate as well. And it's fascinating because all we want him to do is kick back, relax, and get well. We just want him well, but we also want him to do these things. And this is also this is one of those ones where you're uncovering little bits at a time. You cannot get it right until the moment that a piece of information is revealed. I have to be really careful how I say it, because it'd be a huge spoiler if I'm not. But this piece of information is revealed, and it's not revealed until like 3/4 of the way through the book or so. And so you couldn't figure it out before. You can figure out parts of it, like this must be a thing, and this must be a thing, and that. But still, who is behind all the things? And it comes together. There are 5 more Josephine Tay books, and I'm going to buy them all. I'm also going to buy these on paperback, because I think my mother would really enjoy them. Just gotta get American printed ones because, yeah, my mom gets really, really touchy about British spelling, and I'm like, "Mom, you gotta get over it." All right, and then when I was on the plane, I had read Melissa Chapin's Murder Goes Solo last month so that I could read Murder Goes Clamping this month or, August month, and, okay, Murder Goes Glamping, when I was enjoying it all the way up to chapter 6, and then at chapter 6, it just blew up. I was like, I did not want to put it down, and I had to close it so that I could get off the plane and get onto my next plane. I was so mad. It was really, really, really good, and then something happened, and I think it's me. I need to talk to someone else who has read the book, and or I need to go flipping through and checking it out because we're solving this thing. We're investigating. We're getting to find out why there's this body by the campfire and why, this person is missing and all this stuff is going on, and it is fun, and I was just having a blast with the story. The story is great. But then all of a sudden it felt like it got solved really fast. I mean, really fast. And so I think what happened, I think it's me and not the book. And that's why I would love to, if you've read this, please message me, email me something, shatona@shatona.com. I want to know if it did it for you because I think what happened is that with all the airplane mode on and offness and in the airport and switching from Kindle to laptop and back to Kindle, I think chapters got skipped. I think that's what happened because we went from, still trying to investigate and what's going on to instantly knowing what happened and having to, like, capture the bad guy, and I feel like I missed something. I'm sure I must have missed something because outside of that one thing that I was like, "Eh," it was so good. I really, 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 really liked it. So there's that. I'm not going to save this one for any other video thing because I showed it in a book haul, but the I did read While Everyone is Sleeping, that little picture book from, is it Waxwing Press? I think it's Waxwing's Press. Loved, loved, loved that, and I was just really excited to get a hold of that book. It was such a nice, gentle end to summer read too. That was kind of cool. And then the other I think I had one more yeah, I had one more Kindle book. I was talking to an author, I can't remember which one. I It was either Sarah Monson or Tony Shiloh. I don't remember which one, but one of them had just been reading But He's My Grumpy Neighbor. And the title just grabbed me. I had to read this book. It's kind of a rom-com. It's definitely romance. It's clean romance, but I will say it is definitely clean romance. No doubt. It is not Christian romance. It is definitely clean. But I will say that it is if clean can have a bite of heat here and there. So there were a few moments that I was definitely uncomfortable, but again, it was still clean. It was just me. So I'll put that out there. But it was really funny. You have a gal who has moved to this place near Atlanta. It's a little like Peach Grove or something. It's got to be Peach, right? But there's like this little lake. It's a little community. She's got a little bungalow. She loves it there, and she runs a her own business doing like invitations and stuff like that. So she has a dog and she has her routines that she loves. And then in moves hunky neighbor next door who is totally grumpy. So there I should stop here and just say there might be some spoilers in this. So Grumpy Sunshine is like my favorite, probably one of my top 2 at least favorite tropes in romancy kind of things. And it's really funny. I have discovered that for someone who doesn't like gravitate toward romance, I do actually enjoy rom-coms quite a bit. I think it's because so many of them are focused a little less on the rom and more on the com. And so there's that. But um, one of the things, this is by Anna Conwell, and one of the things she does so well is that our Sunshine Gal is not a Pollyanna. She has some serious personal traumas that affect how she reacts, and they're not all gone. I mean, there is, you know, she even has a couple of very serious moments here where she is the past is taking over. So we're not talking everything is just hunky dory, but instead of turning her into a tragic heroine, this author does this fabulous job. What's her name? Conwell? Yeah. She does a fabulous job of just showing that our personalities are deeply rooted, and if we were just a naturally sunny person, life often isn't going to beat us all the way down no matter how hard it tries. Our personality is still going to shine, especially if we're doing, like she is, a very good job of making sure that she puts herself in a safe place, in a comfortable place, sets herself up with the routines that she likes. So there's that. And this grumpy, what I really loved about him is that, you know how a lot, I can't tell you how many books I've read where a guy is grumpy because a girl was mean to him once. I'm just so done with that. I'm just done. This guy has some serious reasons why he has just decided not to trust people outside his family. That was really good. And don't get me wrong, they're also the way he does it is also somewhat unreasonable, which fits his personality. So that was good. Okay, so those things right there gave it like 4 stars. That just right there because it was just so well done. And then her characters actually talked about why they should or shouldn't date. Instead of pretending like, "Oh, we can't talk about that because that's like, we're supposed to pretend like this is just a natural thing." I mean, that is such a huge thing, not just in books, but in real life. It's like people are afraid to just have conversations about, "Are we gonna date? And what is this a good idea? And, what are we gonna do if it's not a good idea? How are we gonna, we have to be neighbors. We have to." They had that conversation. So that plus the fact that this grumpy dude was attracted to more than this gal's body, that it should have been a 5-star read. It really should have been. But then a couple of things happened. First, this thing is written in first person present tense, and I don't dock stars for that. I don't let myself, as much as I don't like that, I never let myself do it just because I don't like that. However, in this one, I kept noticing it. It kept jarring me out of the story. I just don't think it was actually done well. There was one more thing that really got to me. Once the couple gets together, things just rush together. I mean, it just like shoosh at the speed of light. And sometimes that works, especially if people talk about it being like whoosh. But because sometimes that's just how life is. My parents met and married in 6 weeks, okay? I mean, this is a thing. But mm, but then on top of that, there was, like, these extravagant, grand gestures happening, and it didn't fit who they had been all along. They hadn't been that person, and then boom, once they're together, suddenly they're those people. I don't know, it just didn't work. Okay, now it's time to talk about the rest of those books. And it's late at night, and it's late at night. The windows are open, so who knows what you may hear. Neighbors are being special at 2 in the morning. That's kind of fun, but that's okay. So the other books that I read, I've got them here. Obviously, Elizabeth Peters, The Murders of Richard III. This one, I see why my friend Kathy said to read it with Daughter of Time. In this one, there's a house party and everybody is dressing up as one of the people that Richard III supposedly killed or was affected by him or whatever. And then they're there to there's this document that's supposed to prove that he couldn't have done it or whatever. And then stuff starts happening. And It has kind of and then there were none vibe, even though it's nothing like it. So this was really good. I think I gave it 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was a totally different story from the Alan Grant, which was cool. In this one, they're kind of coming to conclusions, but that's the purpose of proving him innocent isn't why they're there. It's kind of secondary. They all think he was innocent, which is why there's this society that meets and does this in the first place. But so there was that one, and yes, I definitely enjoyed it. Okay, and then I read The Lady of Galway Manor by Jennifer Dybel. This is one of those not like other girls stories. So we have the lady Annabelle or Annabeth, one of the two, who she's obviously very intelligent, she's obviously very creative, and her father dotes on her. And so she's supposed to marry this man. That's what they expect from her, but she doesn't want to. And they're sent off to Ireland to deal with the unrest there. This is in the 20s. And so they're sent off, and she is apprenticed to the makers of the clatter ring. And she's, the idea is that she's going to learn how to make this kind of jewelry and learn a bit more about art and different things. And so that's kind of the not like other girls, because let's face it, most society girls wouldn't have been interested in the first place. And secondly, most of the parents wouldn't go for it. Her sister, on the other hand, is very much eager. I mean, the sister is like, I'll marry the guy, and she's like, no. And then of course there is obviously a romance going on, and there is obviously like this is definitely IRA time. It's definitely the Irish in the town don't want them there. They want them gone. And lots of stuff happens. Unfortunately, there's not a lot I can say about what happens because everything is very intertwined and definitely becomes a spoiler. But the young man who works for his father's jewelry business wants out. He has been definitely spoiled by love, if you will, and he doesn't believe in love. He doesn't want anything to do with it. And he hates it. He works for this romantic company where everybody wants this ring, right? And so yeah, it works though. Somehow it works. I don't think it would work if some other things hadn't happened as well. But because there's more to him than just, unhappy in love, then it does work. And the other thing that happens, I should have seen coming. She did a really good job of making me really nervous. I mean, come on, this is historical romance. The girl and the guy are going to get together. It's going to happen. You can't pretend it's not. It's a personal pet peeve of mine, even like when I read a synopsis and it says, basically, well, they get together. Well, of course they're going to get together. This is a romance. If it wasn't a romance, then there would be a question. That would be a Nicholas Sparks love story. And those, he likes to kill them off. So, I mean, there's that. But there's no doubt that this is going to happen. But seriously, I was reading so intensely that I was doubting. I was like, I don't know what she's gonna do. And then she brought something else in, and I'm like, oh, that's what's gonna happen. And I couldn't believe. I was so upset. I was like, she's gonna give me a bait and switch. I just knew it. I was so upset, and she made me doubt and believe, even though it doesn't make sense. It can't happen. So that's some seriously good writing. I did actually really enjoy the writing. I enjoyed the story. I liked the characters. And I like the fact that, yeah, she's not like other girls. But when push comes to shove, she is the daughter of well-to-do people who are in the House of Lords. And she has a responsibility to her family. And she will do her duty. Despite the fact that she's not like other girls. Yeah, she is. In the best way. And so in that respect, I had a lot of I really did kind of have a lot of respect for it. But it was a really good book. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it because there's more to this story than romance, because the romance is peripheral until the very end, which is kind of my preference. Okay, I'm just saying. So it was really good. I enjoyed A Dance in Donegal. I have The Maid of Ballymacul, which that's the one I've been wanting to read all along. But this is the one that Shirley's picked out, so this is the one I read, and I'm glad I did, because I probably would have put it off longer. I won't put off The Maid of Ballymacul forever, because I know the story that one's about, and yeah, I'm really anxious to read it. So there was that. And then the first one I read in the second half of the month, there is a quote in here that I want to read, because anyone who writes gets it. We just get it. So this is a doctor talking with the patient. The patient is an author. And Charlotte said, the doctor, Charlotte says, "You still write a lot. Do you mind telling me what you're working on?" I never tell people what I'm working on. Not that specific. Oh, no, not the specifics. It takes all the energy out of it. If I talk about it, I don't write it. Gray turned his head. But Lottie's right. When I put words down, I feel like I'm alive. I write to remember. I write to explain my life to myself. The doctor. I like that. We all handle the hard things differently, so writing helps you. This is the line. Words are flashlights. They help me take another step in the dark. And yes, that's exactly why I write. That is exactly. Love it so much. And what a beautiful picture of God's word. Can I just say? I'm calling this A Man Called Uva Meets The Extraordinary Deaths of Mrs. Kipp, all mashed together with a healthy dose of dementia. And it's... What? Do you want inside? So, but the whole point of this book is love. And my boys love their points. But no, so Grayson has Alzheimer's. And he is determined to go on this trip back home to West Virginia, because he keeps having this dream. Here's probably a disaster. He keeps having this dream about this woman and somebody trying to push her over a bridge, and it's horrible, and he feels like it's being ignored, and he wants to fix it. So he's going to go, and his wife finally convinces him to take along this other man, to take along a black man. And Neville is now thirsty. He's got to wash down that bones. I am unable to can. So this guy grew up in West Virginia back in the 50s, 60s, whatever. So he definitely has kind of a undertone of inappropriate behavior. Sometimes he's really rude to this black man, and other times they're like best friends. And it's such a wild and crazy ride as you're reading it. And this man is trying to help him see where he's being ridiculous and where he's not. He's trying to give him insight into the ideas that you have about how things are may not be accurate. But at the same time, Grayson is showing this man that just because some people are one way doesn't mean that when someone else does something that looks or feels similar, it doesn't mean that they're the same type of person. And so there's like this give and take going on that those characters don't seem to realize is happening until it's happened. And I can't tell more, because if I do, it will give a lot away. I talked to Chris Fabry. He's the guy that wrote the book for the War Room. And I think he said he's working on something with the Kendrick brothers right now. But anyway, this is put out by Focus on the Family through Tyndale, I believe. But just make yourself at home, Toothless. He's in my chair. But there are 3 books. One is by Angela Hunt, and I can't remember who the other one is by. But there are 3 books that all have the same feel. They're not connected in any way, but they're coming out with 3. And I know the Angela Hunt, I'm pretty sure she's coming on the podcast to talk about it. But this book is definitely in my top 5 for the year. I love this book in much the same way that I loved Mrs. Kipp. It was so good. The back of the book says, "How far would you go to love someone well?" And that's really the key of this book. The whole point. I mean, Chris Fabry was talking. He's like, I don't want it to be that dementia book. And he's right. This book has far more about it than dementia. Everything that Grayson does is out of love, even when he's being selfish and ugly and horrible. And he does get selfish and ugly and horrible sometimes. But even then, love is at the root of it. It's underneath it all. And seeing relationships and what happens when people find out about it. It was such a good book. And I will definitely be reading it again. So I want to just, thank you, Tyndale Focus on the Family, for sending me the book, because it was really good. And I definitely gave it 5 stars. I'm going to save that one for last. Okay, A Gentleman in Moscow. There were a few places that I tabbed, not many, mostly because once I started reading every night, I couldn't put it down. I mean, it was awful. I would move the bookmark 10 chapters ahead, not 5 like usual, but 10 chapters ahead. There's a lot of chapters in this thing, and they're not numbered, so I actually had to count. But this book should be boring. It should be boring. Thank you, Toothless. It should be, it's like, kind of like The Daughter of Time by Josephine Tey. I mean, it all happens in one place. It's got one guy's perspective. But it was so good. I loved watching him become who he became, and I love watching him not change who he was at the core. I loved the fact that there was almost no language in this thing. I don't recall any, but I'm pretty sure that I remember thinking, oh, yeah, but wasn't there? Right now I can't remember any, but I think I remember saying that to someone and then pausing and going, there might have been a word. But so if there were words, there were very, 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 very few, and I appreciated that. And there were, I have to be careful what I say. Because I don't want to give spoilers, right? But there are things that occur that aren't necessarily Christ-like. But we don't have to participate with it. I mean, it's general market fiction. I don't expect it to hold Christian values, okay? I just don't. But this man, in many ways, actually does, even though he doesn't pretend to be a Christian. So there's that. But I like how they handled, for the most part, letting you know what was happening without making you participate. So there was that. It's just all it was a very clean read. I was very surprised. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect Atlas Shrugged, but I did kind of expect that there would be more than I would like, and there just wasn't. It was a beautiful story, and I think it's one of the best lessons I've ever seen in contentment. Just, okay, this is my lot. Now I can live it well, or I can wallow. And this man lived it well, and he did a beautiful job. And there's a twist in here that I did not see coming, and it was so good, and it made the book even that much better. And so, yeah, I will probably read it again. I'm definitely going to get his Rules of Civility because I've heard nothing but good things about that. So if you've read Rules of Civility, please tell me, am I going to like it? I want to know, because that, yeah. Which is good because, so I started reading this book, and you will see there were a few spots that were really good that I did tab. You know, what is it, like 6? Yeah. So there's that. And so because of that, I don't even know if I'm going to keep it or not. I don't think I will. I may tear out those pages and throw it away. That sounds terrible, but I do that now and then. I did that with one of her other books. I didn't want to keep it. Here's the deal. So I started reading and I was kind of bored. So I asked my friend, I was like, do I keep going with this? What's going on? Because I'm kind of not interested. And then she said something that I hadn't gotten to yet. And I was like, oof. So this is going to be spoilery. And I don't apologize for that because I cannot at all recommend this book. Now, my friend said that once she got past one spot, she actually really enjoyed it and got a lot out of it. And I'm so glad she did. I didn't. So The White Witch, I assumed from that title and the fact that Gooch was a Christian and wrote overtly Christian fiction, I assumed that White Witch really was referring to like an herbalist. And in many ways, it does. The White Witch in this one is, she has some Romany in her, but she doesn't travel with the Romany. They come to her, they go, etc. But she has her spells, as she calls them, and they are spells. And then she goes to a black witch, as in a black magic witch, not necessarily someone of dark skin, but she goes to a black witch. And guys, this is where it gets gruesome. In a foul-smelling cupboard, this black witch pulls out the skull of a child to do her spells for this person, for this white witch. We're not talking Harry Potter here, where those people aren't even human. We're talking about people calling on dark, evil, ugly power for what they're looking for. This is during the English Civil War, so there's wars going on. There are lots of things happening in addition to this. But then, you know, you've got that. Now, in this book, that black witch is finally brought to repentance by the loving care of a vicar or a priest. I think the Anglicans call them priests, so it's one of the two. But she is brought to the Lord, and she does change her life. And there's a lot of beauty in that. Okay, I don't want to pretend like there isn't. There is a lot of beauty in, and there's a lot of beauty in a lot of the story. If I could separate myself more from the true sorcery in this book, I think I would have liked it better in the second 2/3. But I'm having just a horrible, horrible time. On top of that, there is a man in here who is in love with this witch, this white witch. He is married, and he indulges in it. It's so very different from, was that the rosemary tree? No, it wasn't the rosemary tree. The Scent of Water. So very different. So in The Scent of Water, there's a woman who falls in love with a married man, which I don't like. But what Gooch did with that is, hello, hope you get there safe. But what Gooch did with that is she showed someone who has this emotion, has this reaction, falls in love with this person, and what she does with it that is right. She doesn't indulge in it. She doesn't make things uncomfortable. She doesn't pursue it. It's a fact in her life that she doesn't feed. And I thought that was done really well. This guy feeds it all the way. And this woman even somewhat torments his wife with it. It's very understated, and you're not even sure at times if the wife even gets it. So I had a big problem with that. The big problem with it, the sorcery was so horrific. There is a scene where she goes in and she grabs that nastiness out of that cupboard and just burns it all. She just gets rid of it all. And that was a powerful scene, and it was really good. And there are a few other scenes that were just really, really wonderful, but I couldn't get past that. I don't know what I gave this thing. I think I gave it 2 stars. I may have given it 3 because of how well the well done stuff is. But man, it's like when Gooch does something I don't like, she really goes all the way. So I am not real thrilled with this, not real happy with it, and am eager to get away from this one and read this month. So those are the books that I read in the second half of August, and that's my Shed-i-ffice. It's looking all nice in autumnal and feeling all cozy, and it got nice crisp cool air coming in. Feels so good. So what have you been reading? I would love to know. Stay tuned. Thursday, Antober. We're going to tell all about the Antober readathon. I'm so excited. I have t-shirts. I don't know if you can see it. This one says, "Hey Carrots." And I have one that says Antober. And I have one that says, "I'm so glad I live in a world where there are Octobers." And all the Ann shirtness. So I'm just like so excited. See you then.